What's up guys, welcome to vizxlization. Nestor Adrianzen here again. Today's question is, how do you calculate the time between two dates in Power BI? As you might have guessed, the DATEDIFF Dax function can definitely help you with these types of tasks. So, are you ready? Let's do this. For today's tutorial, I have two different points. The first one, we're going to learn about the DATEDIFF Dax function in Power BI, just the key concepts to be successful in this tutorial. And finally, as always, I have a really nice case here where we're going to put everything into practice. So now let's move on to the next point. Let's talk about the DATEDIFF Dax function. Like it says right here, it's a date and time function that returns the count of interval boundaries crossed between two dates. So what it's saying here is that with this function, we are getting the difference between two different dates, right? The start date and the end date. We can get a result in seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, quarters, or years, like it says right here. So this is quite straightforward. And now guys, with these concepts in mind, let's move on to the case. Practical case, two questions. The first question, I am actually solving one of the questions that I got in one of my tutorials. I worked on this tutorial a few months ago. It's about how to sum hours, minutes, and seconds, the right way, of course. So the question that we have here is, find the average and total delivery days in the ordered table. If we take a look at the question real quick, how do I extract the duration for each event and then total it? So what we're gonna do here is to find the difference between these two dates, right? Line by line, and then we need to add them. So that's basically what we need to do to solve this question. And we're gonna do this today, my friends. And that's one of the points that we have here, right? Find the total delivery days in the orders table. And also we can find the average because this is very similar as well. So that's one of the first questions. The second question is, create a table with days, months, quarters, and years between the minimum order date and the maximum delivery date. So guys, please keep this in mind. And now, as always, let's go to Power BI Desktop. As you can see, this is Power BI Desktop, and before we solve the questions, real quick, two tables in the model. We have a calendar table, and I call it dates, and we also have the fact table right here, orders, right? So let's explore this table real quick. This table has four different columns: area code, order date, and also delivery date. For one of the questions, the idea is to find the difference between delivery date and order date line by line, and then we need to add every single line, right? So guys, let's do this. Let's go back to report and let's start playing with DAX. So before we start creating measures, we need to create a table to sort measures, right? So let's hit enter data here. You might know this already. So DAX measures, okay? If we recall the questions, the first question was find the average and total delivery days in the orders table. So this is the orders table. So our task is to find the average and total delivery days. All right, so let's do that. Right click and let's create a couple of measures, okay? The first measure is gonna be for the average. For this purpose, because we want to do line by line, we want to use an iterator function. So you might be familiar with this. We're going to use the average x function, okay? So we need to reference a table, and this should be the orders table. And then we need to use the DATEDIFF Dax function. Let's do that. It's right there. So the date one, so it's going to be the order date, right? it is right here. And then the other date, which is the end date, this is going to be the delivery date. All right, comma here. And now we need to find the interval. For this particular case, we're going to use day, but you can use weeks, months, quarters, years, whatever you want to do, right? So let's close parentheses and then close parentheses for the average x function. So let's approve these changes and let's see what happens. It is working, my friends. Perfect. It seems like it's working. So real quick, let's test the measure that we just created, okay? So let's drag this into this card. How about that? As you can see, the average delivery days are 4.17. So we can drag this measure into this table as well, and we will get some results. Check this out. So the average delivery days for each line we have right there, and then for the total we also have the average, which is 4.17. So it's working perfectly, my friends. So now let's do something similar, but we need to use the SUMX iterator function. But before we do that, let's go back to the measure that we just created and let's copy this. Control C, right click, new measure, Control V, and you're going to change the name. It should be total delivery days. We also need to change the iterator function here. It should be SUMX. And then the other pieces are basically the same. So let's hit approve. It's working, my friends. So let's do the same here. Let's drag the new measure into the card. And there you go. We have total delivery days, 121 days. Do the same here into the table. Check this out. So it's working. So we are solving the question that we got from our friend on YouTube, right? Find the difference between these two dates and then sum every single line. That's how it works, my friends. So we are done with the first question. Now we are ready to solve the second question. So the second question is to create a table with days, months, quarters, and years between the minimum order date and the maximum delivery date. So how do we do this? We're going to use the DATEDIFF Dax function as well. And we're going to go to modeling here, insert a new table, because we're going to create a new table. And here we're going to start playing with the code, my friends. We're going to call this table ranges. And then we're going to use variables. So if you're not familiar with variables, I have a tutorial about variables as well, so you can check it out. I'm going to leave with you guys the link. The name for the first variable is going to be start date. Okay? Here we're going to use the minimum function, and we're going to be referencing the orders date column. There you go. So the other variable, we're going to call this variable end date. How about that? We're going to use the maximum function here. We're going to use the delivery date column. All right. And then the other piece for variables is return. And here we're going to use curly brackets. Okay. Because we're creating a table. Open parentheses. So let's name the columns. So the first column is going to be number of years or number of days, whatever you want to do it. Okay. So we're going to use here the DATEDIFF function. And then we're going to use variables here. Start date, end date, and then we're going to use the interval. So the interval for this particular case is going to be year. close parentheses, comma, and here we're going to do the same for the other components of the table, right? So let's copy the code real quick because this is going to be very similar. Check this out. Check this out, my friend. And we're going to put here, instead of years, quarters. How about that? Here's going to be quarter. There you go. Same story here. It's going to be months instead of year. It's going to be month. Same story here. Days, and here we need to replace year with days as well. Check this out. That's all we need, guys, here. Add enter, close the curly bracket here. Check this out. So now we are ready to prove these changes. Let's see what happens. Okay guys, it's working. So let's give it a try. You can see here a new table called ranges. Check this out. If we go back to dates here, there you go. So we have number of years, number of quarters, number of months, and also number of days. We can create a visual as well. Check this out. Check this out, my friends. So we have days, months, quarters, and years. So this is awesome, right? We got these results. If the numbers are changing in the source, the numbers here are also changing. So after you saw this case, what do you think about this function? This is a really awesome function, right? That's all we have for today, guys, and I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If so, as always, please give me a thumbs up, share with your friends, and of course, don't forget to subscribe if you don't want to miss anything. Thank you guys, and see you in my next tutorial.